All right. Thanks for being here, Homer. I've heard you on the radio for like my whole life. So it's kind of funny talking to you in person. Um,
I hope it's the same.
I'm sure it will be. Something tells me you're the same no matter what. But I have a story of the first time I ever listened to you on the radio. I grew up in Oshkosh.
Hmm.
Frank Shady. I don't know if you know Frank Shady. He was my basketball coach. He was pretty good basketball player, but I think he played in Wausau for a long time. But anyways, so my dad and I would go to Packer games once a year with somebody from church that had season tickets that let us use their tickets. And I came home one night after a Monday night game, and I was listening to the radio, and I was mad because the Packers got destroyed by somebody. And you were on the radio just ripping the Packers for being so bad. And I was like, man, he's being so honest. I'm not used to this. Like somebody being so honest, like this team is bad. And I don't know. That was a funny story to me because I hadn't.
What era was that in?
It would have been the 90s.
It had to have been before Ron Wolf showed up and Mike Holmgren.
No, I'm not that old. So it was between probably like the Sherman years.
Oh, okay. Because there weren't that many games. There weren't that many games that it was that bad. So
it was one of the maybe a Monday night game where Randy Moss had like 1,000,000 yards.
All right. Yes, I can see that.
Terrible game. But then they went like 4-12 one year with Favre.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, man, he needs to go. He needs to retire. But that was a long way off. It was like 10 years later that he finally retired. But anyways, so I just was struck by your honesty, and I was like, man, that's how I feel. And when I saw that you were doing a podcast about your faith, I was like fascinated by that because I was like, I love hearing you talk. I don't always agree with you, but I love hearing you talk because you have so much passion. And I was like, this guy's got to be like a charismatic, like he must have some kind of charismatic faith background, but I don't think that's accurate. So I was wondering if you could tell me what your faith background is, and then we'll get to talking about your faith journey a little bit.
There have been a few people periodically that ask me to talk about my faith, which is fine and easy to do. And I always inform them when I start, I just want to let you know, when you finish, you'll either pray with me or for me. And initially, some guy came up once and he said, when you said that, I didn't really get it. He said, but I do now. I will pray for you. So I don't. I was raised a Catholic. Mm-hmm. It was important. There were 8 kids and the 7 brothers and sisters. So we were a small Catholic family back in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And being a Catholic, going to church was important. I was, even at a young age, demanded some level of passion and never had a strong faith because I judged this by how excited people were. And I always thought, well, if this is that important, how come I can't notice it in anybody? As I've grown older and having investigated many faiths, I understand that a Catholic faith is more of a private thing. The way it's built up, and so that behavior is normal, but it's ignorant to think that there isn't a strong faith and passion that people have. They just don't show it because that's the nature of the service. That's the nature, to me, of the foundation of the faith. And so as kids can be, that was pretty stupid, but that's my standard. And then started going to public schools, and then you would go to CCD with other kids. And so somehow I always thought it was important, but I didn't buy it. And then I don't know when it was in college, when I was a freshman at Wisconsin, and my parents were talking about visiting, I had to go find where the Newman Center was because I'd never been there. And fortunately for me, they canceled the trip. And then after a year of college, I quit college and went out and played tennis for a year. And I only bring that up because then I transferred to the University of Arizona. And for some reason, I decided that I needed to start going back to church. And they had a service Sunday night, which allowed me to go get a pizza and then go to mass.
Mm-hmm.
So, there are these questions that you wish you could ask God because it makes no sense.
Right.
And then over time, it just grew and grew. And at about 26, I was teaching tennis. I actually considered becoming a priest. And so I went to to our church, and the priest said, "Well, you need to think about it a little bit." And then it really came down to, like, you can't have a family, you can't have sex.
Right.
And I said,
right.
I'm not giving all that up.
But you would have known that already.
That's what I said to the priest. I did, but I hadn't given being a priest that enough. So now it's like, I could do this. This is really important. It's important to me. It's important for me to talk to other people, which has never been difficult, probably because my father was a professional speaker. Then it really came down to, okay, you're going to do it? Nope, not giving up sex. And the priest smiled, kind of, as people don't know I can see you. And he said, I think that's a good decision. Like that, not pray on it and think about it a couple more days, but
yeah, good choice.
Yeah. And it was more, the sex sounds bigger, but it was more about having a family. I thought that was part of almost like a job. Like, my parents had 8 kids, and I kept thinking, if they didn't have any kids, I wouldn't be here. So clearly having kids comes with the territory. So that ended being a priest. And then I had gone to the Assembly of God church for a while, and I'd gone to the Baptist church for a while. Various people had asked me just randomly, I don't know why. And my parents were very happy when they found out that my fiance was Catholic, which always amazed me, because I didn't know why being Catholic was that important. They would thought, but I think the way they were brought up, there are 8 of us. The majority of us who have a strong faith found it outside the Catholic Church. My younger brother found it through Athletes in Action. I don't know. I don't know where I found it. I don't know why that occurred, and it's impossible for me to explain it. Maybe when I was going to broadcasting school or something, I looked forward to, this sounds odd, to dying, so I can talk to God and go, okay, was this all just luck, or?
Right.
Well, I want a 1-800-God number. This is where people are going to start praying for me, to where you can call God and just ask, was this just luck, or was this God's, plan for my life, or however you put it? Because I think in some cases, God would go like, no, I was watching you. Yeah, you shouldn't have made that one. You were lucky there. Or, yeah, this is part of your plan. So that alone, that concept that I have may be offensive to some people. I'm sorry. My faith is, I reserve the right as a Catholic to have whatever faith I want, because that's kind of how we do it.
Well, so
we can just pick and choose whatever our spots are. And God must be somewhat either amused or forgiving or enjoys it, because he's, seems to still talk to me, and we have great conversations, and it's a huge part of my life. But I would say a certain percentage right now of those listening probably are praying for me. So that's okay.
So I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Oshkosh. My dad came from a family of 8 kids as well, in Wisconsin and Wausau, and they moved around a little bit. But my grandpa was a Church of Christ minister, and so I grew up going to church as well. And I was always encouraged to ask questions. Like, you kind of joke about, people praying for you, because, I've heard you say, like, on your YouTube podcast, like, man, if this is God's plan, like, God needs to get a new plan. Like, this plan stinks. And that was always kind of like how I think I connect with that a lot, because I'm always like, why would there be so much suffering? Why would there be so much pain? So, like, my podcast, I call it Winter Faith Podcast, because I feel like we all have these questions growing up in Wisconsin. Like, I understand winter and how dark and cold it can be for so long, and you kind of get down and depressed, and you're like, what is going on? And you hope the Packers are in the playoffs, because then the economy is better and people are happy, but they're not always. And so what are those questions that you wrestle with when you think, like, God, what are you doing? That's kind of like what my podcast is all about. So I think your listeners are right with you. So
Uh, I would say I was always skeptical on these things of why God's lets bad things happen to good people. No, God let bad things happen to everybody. I
right,
mean, this premise of it's part of God's plan. I go, when something bad happens, people are surprised. I go, why should you be surprised? I checked his resume. He's let this stuff happen for thousands of years. He's got
right,
a bad record of this.
right,
Not because you accept that he can change anything. That's my view of it. I think God could make a miracle. God can do everything that
right.
occurs, he allows to occur. I've always thought, if I see him, like, what was the deal with Haiti? Why don't you like Haiti? Come on, like everything bad happens to Haiti, and then it even gets worse at Haiti. But I just assume he probably lasts. But I never had to address this too much because I believed it's part of God's plan because things were pretty good. Like I could handle everything. Then the stepson of my younger brother committed suicide. I'll start crying. So it's been almost 4 years.
Yeah.
I can cry every day.
Yeah.
And then I had to say, I can't handle this as part of God's plan. I can't accept this. This is part of God's plan, and I would be mad at him forever. I don't know how you could do it. You don't need to know the particulars, but I realize I'm at a position where clearly other people have been. And terrible things have happened in my life. My older brother died of brain cancer, and he was a brilliant physicist at 56. Somehow I got through that, and however I did it. This one I couldn't. And so I walked around saying, God, I don't want to cry every day the rest of my life. I cannot handle this. And one day he said to me, you'll never understand it. You just have to learn to accept it. You have to accept it. And I thought, all right, I'll buy that. I'm in. And that was his way to give me peace. I've never asked my brother to know his. When his son passed away, it was more he felt happy because he didn't think his stepson would be in pain anymore. I was incapable of understanding that. My point is that I now am certain that one of God's greatest strengths is his ability to give peace of mind when people suffer terrible things, because it happens all the time. He doesn't prevent those, but what he can do for everyone is somehow give them a peace of mind so they can move on and not be destroyed or have the rest of their life ruined by trying to figure out or whatever. And so it's huge to me. I don't know how he did it to me. I don't know how he does it to other people, but I'm an accountant, actually. That was my college degree. I just look at the numbers. The people that can't ask and don't ask God for this, the percentages is horrible. Their lives are ruined. They never recover. And every story you hear about someone like mine who has to somehow find a way to get through the winter, like you say, it's always this. And his ability is different for every person. Someone could listen to me and go, that doesn't make any sense. Why do you accept it? I don't know. I can't tell you that. All I know is he asked me, that was his explanation to me. And either that's how it occurred or I'm crazy and I prefer not to be crazy. And the next day it was different. Said, don't try to understand it. Just accept it. Now, do I accept it because it's part of God's plan? Not really. Because that's just a terrible plan. Really. Who would do that? The God that loves everyone. The greatness of God is his love for everyone. That's how he's figuring things out. That doesn't add up. I don't have to figure that part of it out. To me, he answered, he gave me peace of mind in that way. And I think if I asked other people, they would all have probably different stories. But I guarantee you, they've achieved a sense of peace through their discussion, their relationship with God, and him touching. I don't know that he touches your heart as much as he touches your mind, because if he doesn't touch your mind, your heart will never change. So this is, I never thought I would ever get there. I know for 30 years, I said, hey, to everybody, to our kids, accept everything. It's part of God's plan. Until you have something that occurs that hurts so badly that you can't accept that as part of God's plan because you don't think God could be that evil. And I understand his plan is bigger and whatever, but his plan also understands how people are going to take it. So I am in awe of listening to people tell stories like mine and go, God, you're amazing. This is incredible. These are miracles. This should not happen. And it does over and over and over again. And if I still can't figure out, and I'd be lying if I said, I believe this, it's part of God's plan, because it doesn't make sense to me. But I understand. I've never felt like I have to ask him the same way. Well, then explain it to me, because I can easily understand that his plan could be letting humans be humans. And bad things happen. And he allows some things to happen and some he doesn't. And yet he knows one thing, that whatever happens, as bad as humanity can be, he can save people's hearts and their minds and their lives through his incredible way to touch them if they ask. It's always, you got to ask God. Well, if you ask, he will turn your winter. I don't know that he turns it into summer, but he will end that winter. There's one thing I know for sure. He can do this for every human being if they ask and listen. And that's to me a miracle that's as great as, not as great, because there's nothing as great as bringing your son dying for everybody's sin so they go to heaven. But in terms of human life, and I go to the Catholic Mass and they say, peace of Christ. I never even thought of Christ as peace. And yet it's said so often in the Gospels. And that, and this to me is exactly that. It is the peace that he can give people that logically have no business having any peace, given what's occurred to them.
Yeah, I think there's something about finding, maybe you don't go from winter to summer, or like right away you go into resurrection from the crucifixion, but you find peace and contentment in God despite whatever you're in. That's like, to me, what you're saying. Like you're saying I accepted it. I don't understand it, but I accept it.
Yeah. And if somebody said, well, why do you accept it? I go, I don't know. Yeah. That was his answer to me. It was answered to me. And this was months after it occurred, when I just said, I got tired of crying every day. And I can't explain why suicide seems so much worse to me than cancer or anything. I know logically it's because someone chooses to do that. You have bad things happen. No, you choose to end your life. And that just seems so tragic to me. But I asked, and like the next day, it's like somebody knocked on the door with FedEx. I go, okay, yeah. He didn't give me an answer that I wasn't going to buy. Because if God had said to me, it's part of my plan, I go, I'm sorry, I can't buy that. You got to help me in a different way. And he did. A better way for me, maybe not for the next person. No, it's a very common answer for people who go through terrible things is, this is part of God's plan. God is great. And the other part that has always been hard for me, that I wonder why I don't, and that is, well, if something terrible happens and they're going to heaven, you should have a parade, not a funeral. How much do we really believe that people are going to heaven? Because we say that by our actions. Funerals should be just some of the great parties ever. They're not. No. Why is that? Because we say it, but we're not really that sure, especially someone who is faith-filled. What are you doing? We're just partying for the next 5 days. Just come over to our house. Or whatever's going to heaven. We know it, you know it. We're just giving stuff away. There can be no happier day than when you die. That's the best day of your life, your death, if you really believe that you have eternal life and you're going to heaven. Right. It's not even close. And how many people throw big parties? Now you say, but you're sad personally. Okay, you cry a little bit, but how important is that? Then it's about you, not about them. Oh, you're sad. Yeah. I feel your pain. The dude, whoever it is in heaven. You can't see that. You can only think about you. Funerals might be the most selfish events we have.
If we make it all about us, kind
Of
of
course it is,
what you're
because
saying.
everybody's sad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it could kind of be both things at the same time.
No, they
Like
can't be equal. You can't convince me they're
not
equal.
not equal.
I know, but yeah, you go. How many funerals you been where you felt it was as much a party as a funeral?
Oh, never. Yeah, never.
I rest my case.
I think I was just saying we do have this ability as humans to kind of hold more than one emotion at the same time, but they're not equal. They're not.
But I mean,
equal.
this is the greatest day of your life, other than when you are born again or believe in Jesus, is the day you die. I mean, my greatest day is the day I die.
Yeah, I mean, I get you. I hear what you're saying.
I mean, I had a friend once who said, "I just can't wait to die." And I go, that just seems so negative. You know, you don't want it to affect your life because there are so many things you can do. But I don't know how anybody can argue that point.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, just hearing you talk about, the relationships and how much pain and suffering you have through other people, and just, having, like, being a father. My son turned 2 today, and like how much more difficult it is to see somebody else that you love go through pain rather than yourself. Like, it's like, I can take this, but if you're going through something as my friend, that's so much more difficult. And I was wondering if that's been true for you, because I know you personally have gone through, some personal difficulties. But how much more difficult it is to see, like, your son or your wife or somebody else go through something.
Yeah, that to me is the definition of love, of when you think of them before you think of yourself. But it's just been nothing, to me. In all those things that have occurred have just nothing. They're, and how do I decide? I decide because when I think of someone else and start to cry. So for somebody else, it may be, but it's just not that hard. And if I ever thought it was hard, then it was up until that one event occurred in my life.
The one event for you was like a car accident, right?
No, it was the stepson who committed suicide.
Okay.
4 years ago. None of the car. I mean, I just haven't been in that much pain, and it may have been tough for the people around me. But I don't, it's just not that bad.
Yeah. In comparison.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and everybody's right. That way. I'm not saying I'm better. I'm just saying you don't know what's going to hit you. And when something really hits you like that, then everything else is a piece of cake. No, I don't have any, I feel terrible for people that have like Alzheimer's or different things, and the pain that people go through. What I dealt with is just nothing. So
I think I've heard you say, like, like, we all compare grief, and that's kind of how our mind works. I think you talk about that a little bit, and I'm kind of wondering, like, when are you gonna write a book? When are you gonna tell all these stories so I can read them?
I don't want to. I have this great fear that I'll write it and no one will read it. And
well, just have it published after you're gone. That way you don't
maybe.
know.
I mean, I don't. People can just take what I've said and turn it into a book however they want. I can't remember half the things, and then the problem to me with books is that I don't know how truthful I can be.
What do you mean?
There's some things I don't want to say. People I didn't like. Things that irritated me. So you're writing a book, it's kind of somewhat true. I mean, my faith, that part of it, I could probably do.
Yeah.
But even that, the faith and things that occurred, I'm leaving stuff out. And I want to. So then, how much is it really the truth? I'm happy with the things that I've said. This, and maybe someone will think it's important enough. But I think part of the fear is no one will read it. What was the point?
But why is that different than getting on the air and speaking about your faith, or you made a YouTube page? What if nobody watches it? Like, how? Well,
part of it is I'm just kind of lazy, I guess. I mean, the book takes effort. All these things occur, Um,
Yeah.
the My Faith with Homer and Pip, which we do on YouTube,
Hmm.
was totally the result of my fascination with Mother Teresa, who I think is just one of the greatest humans ever.
Hmm.
And I would just thought it was for what she did. Then someone gave me a book about the things she said. And
Hmm.
I agree with everything. I think everything she said is so brilliant, so
Hmm.
perfect. And so part of it is that she helps all these people in India, but they weren't going
Hmm.
to let her help them because they thought she was Christian, and then it meant changing everybody into a Christian faith. And she
Hmm.
said, no, you pray to your God, I'll pray to mine. And then she saved all these people and did all these great things. And so I thought the greatness to me of my faith is that everybody's story is different. Let everybody tell their story. We've never once said, how can you believe that? What do you believe? It's not the interest. The interest is for people to hear other stories and recognize that in the difference, there's just always a similarity.
Hmm.
And that's what I love doing. We've had a couple Jewish people on. We haven't had any Muslim, but at some point we will. And certainly within the Christian faith, you just have this wide range.
Right.
And the reason I assume it's not going to be financially successful is because you're basically saying, all right, we're going to do a football thing, but we're going to have every team as equal. No, I'm sorry. I'm a Packer. I just want Packer stories. Yeah, it's the way it
Sure.
goes.
Sure.
But that's has been my fascination, just because of that's the approach that Mother Teresa. And if she had stood by, no, you have to allow me to speak of my faith. Think of all the people whose lives would never have been changed, and all that has occurred because of her group and what she's created, based on agreeing to that, which is a fundamental violation of everything about missionaries. No one goes to a missionary and says, well, you can't tell me about Christ. No, that's what you do. And
Mm.
she didn't not talk, she didn't change her, but she violated that fundamental rule to me of missionary. And as a result, and so maybe I'm doing the same thing in a much smaller way, of recognizing the faith stories rather than the specific denomination group.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking time, Homer, and it's so good to meet you kind of in person. And just, I just continue to love your passion, and I love what you're doing with My Faith on YouTube. And yeah, I just hope you keep doing it.
And I look forward to hearing other people's stories. So, as I said, the part of my faith is the realization that either this is all real or I'm insane, and I don't want to be insane. So, I feel lucky.
Mm.
God is great. God loves other people. But the part I feel most blessed about is the understanding in trying to let everyone realize that one of God's greatest gifts is the ability to give you peace. And you may not need it yet. I hope you never need it, but I'm guessing you probably will. And he's there for you in a way that you won't think is possible. And he will get it done. He always does.
Cool. Thank you.
You bet.